Hey everyone, and welcome to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 11. It is called Wink of an Eye. Full spoilers for the episode, as always. We are right in the middle now of Season 3, right in the middle of the trenches, as it were, as widely reported, the worst of the three seasons. And we have an episode here that is actually, I think, full of a lot of good ideas.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I don't think it's a good episode overall. I don't think it's a bad episode though. I think it's a very average kind of just
Yeah,
it's all right.
it's a mediocre episode overall, but the ideas are actually really interesting. They just don't necessarily develop enough or do enough with them
Yeah,
because it's actually very similar to something the Flash did last season called Flash Time, where we have this race of aliens called the Scalosians who. You know, the Enterprise comes to this planet. There's like a distress call. It's a city, but it's been abandoned. There's no one here. Kirk hears this buzzing, and the big reveal after weird stuff starts happening on the ship, like there's a random force field. There's a red
someone
shirt. Yeah,
disappears.
a red shirt just disappears. I started laughing because it was like the most like easy red shirt death of all time. He didn't get shot. He didn't get stabbed. He didn't get pushed over a cliff or tripped over something.
He just
He
vanished.
just vanished, and I started laughing because he's a red shirt disappearing. Uh, but the big twist is at least five individuals. The people of this race move so quick. They are of a different frequency essentially, and they're invisible to us. And all we hear when they're around is a buzzing. That's all that comes across instead of the actual words or noises that they're making. So they're moving so fast that everyone else is standing still in comparison to them. So they're on the ship, and about a third or so into the episode, they turn Kirk into kind of one of them. They sort of drug him so he
Speed him
becomes
up a bit.
as fast as them. So he's walking around, all the rest of the crew are standing still. That's what it
Moving
looks like.
very slowly is what they're doing.
Yes. Um, and we meet the woman who's from this group who has a crush on Kirk. Kind of explains it all. Is like, yes, we're going to use you, and eventually you'll slow down and you'll die really quickly. You'll age like really rapidly because of how fast we're moving. But until then, I'm going to use you to procreate, and then we're going to, because they've got a device on the ship. They're going to freeze the ship so that all the other crew members are there to be used when like Kirk and the few they've got are going to run out, and then they'll get some more crew, and they'll keep just basically mining their way through them.
Yeah, and Kirk's like, "Nah, it's cool. I'm going to float my way out for the millionth time."
That's what he tries. It doesn't work completely at first though. She actually catches him. She calls him on his bluff
She
and catches
does.
him
She
trying to
does.
steal his, because his phaser doesn't work. His phaser moves so slow that she just kind of steps out of the way. She's like,
Yeah,
which was actually kind of a fun effect. I feel like I'm actually it's annoying how good this episode could be because there's so much of it I actually kind of like in concept. I like the idea that the rest of the crew are like, oh, Kirk's gone, and it's like, okay, what do we do? And they kind of figure out, okay, there's these beings that are moving so fast, but how do we even like battle that? How do we figure that out?
I think that's part of the problem. Is I don't know how they figure it out. Spock's just at some point is like, guess they're fast.
He basically he's looking through like a footage of them, and then he like speeds it up to see what it sounds like, and it's like, oh, that sounds like the buzzing that everyone's hearing.
Yeah, but I don't know where he even got that hunch from. Go, oh, I'll try speeding it up, right? I don't know what
That's no,
prompted
that's
him
fair.
to think
That's
that.
fair. But I do like the idea of that problem solving and like how do we fight this and what do we do with it? So as much as it overall is a mediocre episode, because the villains have got these awful looking costumes and those elements that don't work about it. Like I do appreciate the ideas. Like I kind of I want to
Oh,
like it.
definitely. Yeah,
I really want to like the episode, and it doesn't quite hit it. But
yeah. Which is it's more frustrating than it just being a bad episode, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. Because I genuinely, because Kirk leaves this message, and then he just it's like, and she's like, oh, by the time they get that message, like we'll already be gone. Our plan will already finished. But then Kirk murks up with the transporter so they can't leave, slows them
Yeah.
down a little bit, and I mean the one thing that works because of that whole speeding up the footage thing is that when they get this tape from Kirk, it's just like a buzzing
They know
noise.
to slow it down.
Yeah, they slow it down. I mean, I could play a little bit of an nerdy critic here and say, well, even in the future, I still imagine that video runs on frames, and slowing it down or speeding it up would just, eventually, it wouldn't just slow down and be perfectly played back. It would slow down and it would be moving it frame by frame, like really, unless it's like 10,000 frames a second.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Unless there's enough frames, it's just really good interlacing.
Yeah, it's a really, 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 really high frame rate camera in the future, and that's fair. I'm being nitpicky by criticizing that, but because I actually thought it was going to be worse when Spock was speeding up. I thought it was going to like show like a hidden message or something like that. I was actually relieved when all it did was make the noise that they've been hearing. I was like, okay, I'll buy that.
That's how
Yeah.
it works now. You speed it up enough, it just becomes a noise.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I appreciate
Yeah.
that because I was worried as he was doing it because he was just doing it slowly and they were moving a little bit fast and they were slowing down a bit. He was going back and forth. Like, oh, he's going to like see like the secret of like the quicker people moving or something like that. And I was kind of dreading it because I thought, oh, that's going to take me out of this because it's kind of bullshit. But
Yeah, no, it never does that.
yeah, so props for that.
It does do one of your other pet peeves though,
Oh
of
yes,
showing footage just from the camera angles.
Star Trek's guilty of this before. In fact, the entire menagerie, which used the pilot,
Yeah,
the
yeah.
cage.
But at least in that one, you can kind of write it off as okay. They just had all this footage they had to do something with.
Yeah,
right?
technically that episode's not canon, so I suppose you could argue, okay, that's not really footage of the show at that point. It was never
Yeah.
on the show.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no,
Whereas
that's
this,
fair.
it's just watching them down on the planet, walking around.
It was a scene we had earlier in the episode, and it's the same
Exactly.
shot. It's just the same
Yeah.
footage. Yeah, it's a pet peeve. I mean, I get why they do it because it's hard to like do anything else. But I would just appreciate like a static camera angle, as if it's not a security camera, which it often would be. It's at least like the idea of like they were watching, so it was just this far back like wide view
Yeah.
or something.
with it.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that rather than just the actual scene with the actual edits that it had in the episode. It's weird to me.
It is.
But hey, this is I can forgive it. Yeah, like I say, actually, because when Kirk realizes that he's looking around and everyone's just kind of standing still, and then she shows up and explains,
Yeah.
what's going on. He's moving fast.
He's like, "What did you do to them?" And it takes a couple of minutes for him to get his head around that that she didn't do anything to them. She did to him.
Yeah. And it's a really fun idea that when we come back to the crew, they're like, where'd the captain go? And they try to figure it out, and they can't, like, this is weird. Is it the coffee? Scotty's really worried that it's going to happen to him, because we've been drinking the same coffee.
Yeah,
Really, really, really worried about it.
he's fine. It's not in the scotch.
And of course, Spock eventually sort of figures out how to, like, take some of their, like, water, I think, from the planet to, like, speed himself up. So he goes into the speed, the hyper time with Kirk, and helps them, like, fight them back. And then, because
I will say, I thought it was weird that when Kirk meets up with Spock, towards the end they're going to confront the guy. Kirk pulls out the weapon that he's taken off her, and Spock just pulls out his own phaser, and Kirk doesn't go, "Yeah, that's no good. I ain't gonna do anything."
Yeah, I should have mentioned something. It makes sense that Spock wouldn't know, but Kirk really should have.
Kirk should have brought him up to speed.
Yeah, he probably should have. Yeah, pun.
That
Very,
wasn't
I noticed the pun.
intentional.
I saw it.
I didn't actually mean that.
I caught it. But no, the other little thing I liked is that through at the start of the episode, they sabotage a lot of the ship. There's like all these weird malfunctions happening all over the place. Kirk takes the thing that McCoy made. When Spock was making his thing to get quicker, McCoy and tangentially also made the cure for this to come back to normal. And Kirk takes this and he comes back to the bridge. And everyone's happy to see him. He's like, yes. All these malfunctions still happening? Oh, don't worry, Spock's working on it. They will be dealt with, almost immediately. And then Spock just appears, and the idea being that he's stayed in hyper time, went and fixed all the things, which to them is almost instant, and then just appeared. I'm like, okay, that's a neat trick. And presumably they only have a limited supply of this stuff to do it, so they can't just use this all the time. So we get around that little plot hole of, why don't they just use the super speed drug next episode to solve X problem?
I guess they could go and get more of the water, but
yeah.
Well, let's just keep it simple.
Yeah, the weaker elements of the episode, because everything I've been talking about so far, I actually kind of like quite a bit. The weaker elements that don't quite work is the main leader of the alien group. Like, he's just kind of this generic jealous guy because the woman's into Kirk.
And just the mundanity of Kirk with the woman, right?
Yeah, we've seen a lot of this before.
Done this already.
Yeah, that's very fair. The conflict with him is not actually that interesting. The concept of how they exist is fascinating, but them as characters are really boring. And like I said, the awful outfits they're all wearing is also pretty
Very
rough.
distracting, yeah.
Yeah. And because of that, the actual like fight to like sort of win, it's just like a quick trick. Oh, I blast them. That's it. We're done. I think that makes that side of it less exciting. So it's a shame because I feel like if you touched up the script a bit, made these characters a little bit more interesting, I think you could get to a point where, and this is the thing, I got worried early on because like when they first find the device and they take their phasers out to shoot it, and then their phasers just disappear, right?
Yeah, you thought, oh, godlike being.
Godlike being, they can just do anything. But once they explained how they existed and how they do things, I'm like, that wasn't just anything happening. All that happened there is they literally just grabbed them out their hand. Like,
and they didn't, they didn't perceive it quick enough.
Yeah, and because they're moving so quick, we can't see it. They actually explained it in the context, so I appreciate that.
This is one of those episodes where, with a better script, this could have been one of the best episodes of the show.
It could have been, yeah, it absolutely could have been. This was a very unique. It's definitely because so many of the bad episodes they feel like rehashes of bad episodes we've already had, which is part of the problem. It's not the only problem, but it's part of the problem. Yeah. This one genuinely is like, oh, this is quite an original idea. I assume for the time as well. I can't imagine there was much before this with this type of.
No, obviously we're talking now. We get it on the Flash, but
yeah,
you didn't see that much then.
It's been 50 years, all right,
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's telling that most of the bad elements of this are the typical generic Star Trek things where it's not on form and it's just kind of pulling out the standards, right? And just filling the time with all the usual stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you could either cut it down so that it's just less of that, so it's just to the point with that stuff, or you just rate them as better characters, make them more interesting. Maybe we don't have a love interest for Kirk, maybe just have one, like, I don't know, instead of having the jealous villain, maybe have him just be someone who likes to play games with Kirk. And maybe that's getting into some sort of, like, Q territory from Next Gen or whatever, but like, someone who maybe like, likes to spar with them verbally a little bit and sort of like, play with his mind and trick him and you know.
I think this is it. Everything that's original about this episode is good.
Yes.
It's just all the other stuff that's okay. It's just the mundane standard Star Trek film.
Even down to the fact that they set up that eventually anyone who comes into their like time speed, eventually becomes docile and is willing to do whatever they say. So you were kind of waiting for Kirk to do that. And then the whole thing, as you'd probably guess, he pretends that he's become docile so she'll trust him. And then he, uses it to grab the gun and save the day. And it's so typical and predictable.
I feel like we've seen that at least 3 or 4 times on Star Trek already.
Yeah. So, some legitimate problems, but this is definitely much, much better than last week's episode. And it's definitely not embarrassing like last week's episode.
No, it's a bit mundane and standard, but there's nothing outright bad in this episode.
Yeah, and some of the ideas are genuinely really, really good and interesting. So I think ultimately I'd say this is one that I would say don't skip it. When you're working way through Trek and you want to skip the bad episodes, this is probably still worth a watch, at least the first time.
It's funny given the reputation season 3. We're almost halfway now, and I'd say so far it's not been as bad as I feared it was going to be. It's had really bad lows, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But overall, it hasn't been consistently atrocious.
There's been 2 or 3 good episodes. There's been a couple of sort of ones like this that were kind of just rough and in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
And there's been a few outright stinkers. So, yeah, I guess it's not too bad ratio-wise, but we'll see how the back half of the season...
Yeah, it does make me concerned about the back half. That we're every time we get an all-right episode or a good episode, I'm like, is this the last one?
We'll find out. That said, though, if we get one more as bad as last week's, this season's a write-off.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Worse than Spock's brain, might I add. That last episode was worse than Spock's brain. I'm saying it just outright.
I agree. I think Spock's brain was very bad, don't get me wrong. But I think even we said at the time, it wasn't the worst of the show.
No, there's episodes in seasons 1 and 2 that I think are worse than Spock's brain.
Yeah, whereas last week, I don't know, that's really down there.
Last week's maybe the worst episode of the show so far.
It might be. I'd have to go back and look about what else is up, but it's really down there. It's a contender for sure.
Yes. Obviously, at the end of the season, much like season 1 and 2, we'll do our top 5 and worst 2 or 3. That said, though, it may also be worth doing like a top 10 of the whole show
Show.
at that point.
Yeah, we could do. Yeah.
That may be worth something. Which it'd be kind of easy because we'd look at our top 5s from the 3 seasons and go, okay,
I mean, arguably, yeah, but we might think, yeah, none of these from season 3 stack up against some of them from season 2, perhaps.
oh, maybe, yeah, that's absolutely possible. Well, that'll be the fun. Will there be any episodes from season 3 that make that top 10? That would be the challenge.
I think it'll just be interesting to see if there are any episodes from season 1 or 2 that make it onto the top 10 that weren't in the top 5 for their season. Like,
Well, that would
like,
that would mean that one of the seasons has 6 episodes that are better than, or at least the 6th episode in season 2, say, is better than the 5th episode
best
from
of
season 1.
Season 1,
Yes,
yeah.
it's possible.
It is possible.
Yes, but I mean, we'd have to go back and check. But anyway,
We would have to.
that is this week's Star Trek discussion. That is in the blink of an eye. So let us know what you thought of this one.
Wink of an eye, wasn't
And
it?
the wink of an eye, was it? Yes, it was.
Just wink of an eye.
Wink of
wasn't
an eye, yes, yes. Blink of an eye honestly works just as well.
it does, but you added on in inner as well. I'm
Close
just being pedantic.
Close enough. So, also, can I just say that we recorded this after doing this week's Expanse, and the contrast between watching the Expanse and then going back to a 60s episode of Star Trek is just it's a whiplash. Just such
It's a little surreal, yeah.
Yeah, but hey, so let's know what you thought of this week's Trek. Get in the comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff. Get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel, head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv. Even at the $1 tier, you get these Star Trek reviews a week early. $1 is great as well. That's better than even watching all the ads on YouTube and stuff. But if you can't, obviously, support us financially on Patreon. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. All that helps. All of it supports us. Also, we should promote something else at the end of one of these. What have I not promoted yet in one of these? Weekly news. We do a weekly news, a movie news show, where we talk about movies that have been announced and development, big casting details. There's like a horror movie section. There's a comic book movie section. We typically highlight stuff that I mean, obviously it's a sci-fi show. We do typically focus on a lot of sci-fi stuff, so we'll rarely miss any big sci-fi news. That'll usually be there, and we'll talk about it.
Get some hot takes.
Potentially.
It's happened.
Potentially. But hey, so you can check out that. That's 1.21 gigawatts movie news. We do that every week, so have a look at that. So that is us. Thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys, and we'll see you next time.